Hey, well, welcome to the info session for Shamanic Elements and Reiki. I'm Reina Prado, and I am really excited about this work and sharing this work with you all. I have been teaching this, I want to say, for 3 years, and different iterations of them have well, let me rephrase that. There haven't been different iterations. Is what I've shared in those 3 years is only half the program. And so much of this work has come about because of how I, as a practitioner, have integrated these practices. And so I intentionally call it Shamanic Elements in Reiki. This is not shamanic Reiki. I know somewhere out there in the internet, there are many who say that description, but I'm very intentional calling it Shamanic Elements because for me, it's been these aspects of curanderismo, of shamanism, that have integrated their way into my Reiki practice. So as a practitioner, I came into holistic energy through craniosacral and polarity work. And at the tail end of my training, I came to learn about the Shawnee in the Northeast and the practice that they had of being bone setters. And in Mexico, where my family's from, we call them hueseros, hueso meaning bone, and sobadores. And I knew some in my family were already doing that kind of medicine work, but also, Western medicine and whatnot. But it wasn't until the tail end that I learned of this. And what actually got me really fired up when I knew of it is that the missionary who was working with the Shawnee, or Christianizing them, their son adopted those practices of the bone setters, and it's what we now understand as osteopathy. So the medical practice of working with bones, the osteopaths, the roots of that are indigenous. But we don't know this until someone shares that story. And it was this one article that I read from from a member of that nation. And then it all started to click for me. So that's how I reconnected to my own practice of being a sobadora, being a huesera. And understanding, again, the mechanics of the energy system with craniosacral and polarity, and all of that work really just made sense to me because polarity works with the elements. And that makes sense to me. Like I have an understanding of that. And I had an understanding of that in terms of the chakras and all of that. And so for me, coming into Reiki came many years later. And when I started to integrate Reiki in my practice, these other practices started to weave themselves in. And it wasn't a conscious thing saying, oh, now I'm going to do this and now I'm going to do that. But it just became very fluid for me. So for me, it really just helped understand the energy systems. So the 7 energy systems, right, that Reiki focuses a lot on. And understanding that also traditions in Mesoamerica also have an understanding of the chakras. They may not call it that. In Nahua, it's Totonalcayo. And so, understanding all of that, and that also understanding that shamanism exists in all parts of the world. So everyone has a lineage to tap into. We may not know the source of it because somehow it got cut through colonization or through shame or through denial, as was the case in my family. But what started to happen as I opened up to these practices, that I would start to get this insight of how these knowings, these teachings were already a part of me and started to come through in the most organic ways. And that's what I've been sharing. So for me, to call it Shamanic Elements and Reiki, and I love the acronym S.E.R, because in Spanish it means to be or beingness, but it also means your soul. And this practice, these courses, these trainings in this 3-month program are to really help the practitioner come more into integration and integrity with their S.E.R. Because what we start to do is learn practices of expanding and fortifying our luminous energy field. And through the different rites, there's 10 rites that are given throughout the entire program. These are rites that are going to help you really come into a conscious awareness of your destiny. And that seems really big, right? But imagine if it's no longer, oh, lo que pasará, pasará. Well, whatever will come, right? And yes, there's some great like faith and we just let it be. But also, as we're amplifying and fortifying and revitalizing our energy field, we are starting then to also calibrate into things that match that vibration, right? And so things start to shift. And for me personally, things started to shift a lot. So here's a little bit about what I was sharing you earlier about learning about the bone setters. But for me, I have done now holistic energy work for over 10 years. I went full time in 2018. And it was really interesting because I was a college professor for over 20 years. And I was doing these trainings and I would do, my holistic energy work once a week. And, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to have my practice and do this full time? But one of the things I was aware of while teaching and while, doing these trainings, the field, literally the energy field in my classrooms were very different. I showed up differently and I was becoming very aware of that. And so I'm not saying that you need to become a holistic energy practitioner when you finish this program, but what this program will give you is a nice complement for you to ground into in whatever ways you are of service, right? And I think we have to remember that because we could be of service working in an office and then everyone starts noticing, wow, it feels really different here. Or they really just want to hang out with you because your energy is just calm. And then they walk away calm, right? Because you've been doing this work for yourself. And that's why I really believe that this program is more about the practitioner. And yes, you do learn some really cool stuff. And so one of the things that I'm going to provide in this program is weekly video drops on different aspects, learning about plants, learning about crystals, learning how to protect your energy, learning how to, understand the itis, AIRES. These are energetic airs or energetic cysts that show up in the body. And these are 13. This is from the Insight and Awareness of Curanderismo. And essentially the itis are a type of soul loss where we experience something in our life and it creates a type of shock, a type of fear, a type of phobia. And so there's different degrees of that intensity. And so a lot of that content I share as well, working with your intuitive gifts, also understanding how to co-create with your animal guides. So, so every week there's a video drop, so that's going to be included. And I mentioned earlier the 10 rights. So these are the attunements, and this is coming from the lineage of the Munai Ki. So in Quechua, Munai means love, and Ki is like Chi from the Asian tradition of energy, right? So this is the energy or the power of love. And each level of the course includes a series of rights. And so during today's info call, I'm going to give you the first right, initiating you into the lineage of healers. There is, the way I've set it up is the weekend trainings are going to be the introduction to the protocols and includes the practicum. And then you as a practitioner during the 3 months are going to complete 25 case studies, and then you have another 3 months to complete the remaining 25 case studies, so that you have, you know, some sense of how this works and familiarity with it. I find that often when we're doing a Reiki training, I don't want to say traditional, but a most popular or a most popular way of presenting Reiki is the one day and then you're done and then you go off into the world. And so for me, it's really important to understand the protocols and to understand, like, what do you notice as a practitioner when you do it for yourself, when you do it with others, and how this starts to build. And so all of the protocols are going to be shared. Each aspect can be done on its own in a therapy session or in a group setting, right? If you start to facilitate circles, it can help set the tone for the space as well. And you do not need to be a Reiki practitioner to do this program of Shamanic Elements and Reiki. If you do not have, if you are not attuned to Reiki, I will give you the first attunement as well after the first class. So a lot of what you learned in the protocols is going to be aspects of sacred geometry, sound healing, therapeutic touch. A lot of these protocols can be done without touching, as some of you are going to take it remotely or in person. And towards the end, the final 2 classes, we're using essential oils. So those 2, I will teach you how to do the application of the oils on the body for 2 particular protocols that come towards the end of the program. And so there's 7 courses in the curriculum. The first one is the introduction to your luminous field, and you'll get a sense of that today when I give you the first right. So it's a lot of the early practices, building the altar, understanding the directions, who are the guardians of the directions, being introduced to the elemental energy field, as well as the itis. When we get into level 2, we're understanding the chakra system in a different way through these master guardians. And moving into level 3, we start to get a little bit more into sacred geometry, but we're learning how to move in alignment with our soul purpose. And this is understanding 3 energy centers from the Mexica cosmology of the Tonali, the Teyolia, and the Ihiyoto. So the crown, the heart, and the liver. And that one's, more often than not, I use that one in a session, just that one aspect. And so Patti, who is in the previous photo, offering the session to one of their colleagues, shares, "I am beyond grateful to you for sharing your wisdom and protocols and incorporating shamanic elements in energy sessions. My biggest takeaway was the tender and care which I must approach the client, but also the setting of the space through the altar, the calling in of the directions, the grounding, the clearing and protection aspect. Your emphasis on this was clear and has been life-changing for myself and how I plan to work with others. What you shared has allowed me to feel ready, capable, and willing to share with others. Thank you for all your knowledge shared." And here I appreciate Patti really understanding my truly my emphasis on that, because in level 1 is where we get introduced to that, but it's a practice. And so when you're of service working with many, sometimes we're not aware of how much we may unknowingly take on other people's energy, or unknowingly other people's energy is like you're cool. I'm gonna hang out with you. It's like, you're not mine. Go back to, let's send you back to where you are to be, right? Other aspects of the training, we have level 4, where we really get into sacred geometry. And this is, I call it ancestral integration, because we're working with a lot of the energy of our lineage, our family, our ancestors. A lot of the protocol is worked on the back side of the body. We get more into guided experiences here. And then level 5, I split it into 2 classes because it's a lot of content, but we understand the elemental system a little bit more. We go more in depth, and each element has its own protocol. And so in level 5B is where I introduce one of the first protocols with the essential oils, the raindrop treatment. And then finally, it's the final protocol, which is the flowering heart. And this is a version of the love limpias that I'm known for. And this is really great for helping to tend to emotional trauma. I think all the protocols will do some form of that. But this one, because there's one protocol where we use the essential oils at each of the chakra centers, is going to be really helpful. And the roots of this protocol is actually Kemetic in its roots, from Aset, from the Temple of Isis, and so working with that. So I have divided the meeting dates, the office hours, and the weekly video content in, and it totals to 200 hours in 3 months. So that might seem like a lot. Everyone take a breath. It's very doable. So we're meeting almost every other week, roughly. In May, because of Mother's Day, we're not meeting that second week of the month. And in July, because of the 4-day weekend, we pushed it to the second week. So we return back to that. And so the program begins April 13th, that first weekend, and we end the last weekend of July. And in between, we have office hours. I set up 2 different times for office hours, just in case we need to meet for a morning crew and the evening crew, so to speak. So it depends where people are at. But once we have the cohort set, you can all decide which office hours you want to meet. Levels 1 and 2 are going to meet remotely, so we do not need to be present for that. But once we get into levels 3 and higher, there's some therapeutic touch. Again, a lot of this can be done remotely, so you don't need to feel like you need to touch someone. But in the event that you do, you'll have knowledge around that. At the moment, there is an early enrollment rate at $1,800, but because you're on the call until March 3rd, you can enroll for full rate of $1,500, or set up a 3-month payment plan of $500 a month. If you decide not to enroll in the entire program, you can enroll in a single course for $375. And the only caveat with that is that you don't have access to the video content. It's just the training of the weekend that is included with that. So some questions that might come about. What if I can't attend the weekend training? We understand things happen. You will have access to the replays. However, it will be important to set up on your own a private hour session with me where we get to work through some of this stuff, so that I understand that you got through the concepts and are comfortable doing the protocols. And if you don't have to be here in person. Again, as I've shared, it's a hybrid format, so you could join remotely, and then we can. I'll show you how to do the protocols remotely, because they're quite effective. One of the things about energy work, it has no boundaries, and if anything, that has been the blessing of the pandemic, that we all learned oh, we can actually be of service in these ways and still connect to people, right? So it's really, really amazing. It's okay if you're not a Reiki practitioner, just as long as you have a practice of holding space for clients. That's all that's really necessary. And again, I share that I am asking 50 case studies because it helps you to really become more familiar with the protocols, more confident with the protocols, more resource when you're meeting with clients. You know, client might bring in a situation and you'll be able to reference, oh, here's something with this particular element or this particular item. And that just gives a richer understanding of what's happening other than what is the presenting issue. So yeah, so I'm gonna pause here, and this is actually the rite that we're gonna do is the Hampa Karpai rite, initiating you into the lineage of healers. This is again rooted in the lineage of the Muneki. 13 guides introduced this lineage to the Quero people in the Peruvian region of the Andean Mountains. And we're going to go through a fire ceremony together. But let me take a pause here